I spent 6 years building his empire while he was building a life with someone who'd never changed a single diaper. I worked 12-hour shifts at the firm while he worked late with his assistant. I planned our 10th anniversary dinner down to the flowers he once said reminded him of our first date. He didn't show up. Instead, he sent a text, "Don't wait up." Real emergencies don't stop for participation trophy marriages. When he finally came home at 2 a.m., he looked at the cold dinner and laughed. He called me a failure who couldn't even keep a husband interested. My name is Caroline. I was 34 when I realized the man I married at 24 no longer existed, or maybe he never had. We lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a house I'd helped him buy with my signing bonus from the law firm where I'd made junior partner 2 years earlier. Marcus was a financial consultant who'd built his reputation on my connections, my client referrals, and my willingness to play the supportive wife at every networking dinner while he collected the credit. 10 years. A decade of marriage that looked perfect in every photo but felt hollow in every moment that mattered. The anniversary he forgot wasn't our first. He'd missed our 8th because of a client crisis that turned out to be a weekend golf trip. He'd been late to our 9th because he was stuck in traffic that somehow smelled like perfume when he finally walked through the door. But our 10th felt different. I'd asked him 3 weeks in advance to keep the evening free. He'd promised. He'd even smiled when he said it, that easy charm that used to make me feel chosen. I should have known better. I left work early that day, something I never did. I stopped at the florist and bought white peonies, the flowers he'd given me the night he proposed. I picked up his favorite wine from the small vineyard we'd visited on our honeymoon. I wore the dress I'd been saving, deep blue silk that still fit the way it had before I'd stopped having time to take care of myself between managing his calendar and mine. Table was set by 6. Candles lit by 7. Dinner keeping warm by 8. By 9 I'd blown out the candles. By 10 I'd drunk half the wine alone. By 11 I'd stopped checking my phone. When his text came through at 11:47 p.m., I read it 3 times before I understood what I was seeing. Not an apology. Not even an excuse. Just contempt, delivered in 23 casual words that rewrote 10 years of my life into a punchline I hadn't agreed to be part of. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I sat there in the dim kitchen, still wearing the blue dress, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. When Marcus finally came home, it was past 2 in the morning. I heard his keys in the door, heard him stumble slightly. Not drunk, just careless, the way people are when they're not worried about consequences. I was still at the table. The food had long gone cold. The second bottle of wine sat unopened because I'd decided I wanted to remember this moment exactly as it was. He walked into the kitchen and stopped. Looked at me. Looked at the table. Then he laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an apologetic one. A real laugh, the kind that comes from genuine amusement. "Jesus, Caroline," he said, loosening his tie. "You're still up? Still doing this whole sad housewife routine?" I didn't respond. I just watched him. "Look, I'm sorry I forgot, okay? But come on. You know how important this deal is. You of all people should understand that some things matter more than..." He gestured vaguely at the table. "Whatever this is." "Our anniversary," I said quietly. "Right. Yeah. Our anniversary." He opened the refrigerator, pulled out a beer. 10 years of you keeping score and me apparently never measuring up. That's what we're celebrating, right? Something in my chest went very still. You think this is about keeping score? Isn't it always? He took a long drink. You with your fancy law degree and your junior partner title, acting like you're not constantly reminding me that you make more money, that you work harder, that you're so much more successful than I could ever be. I stared at him. Marcus, I have never. You don't have to say it, Caroline. It's in every look. Every time you offer to help with my career. Every time you introduce me to one of your clients like you're doing me a favor. He set the beer down hard enough that foam spilled over the top. "You want to know why I forgot tonight? 'Cause honestly, I forgot you still cared. You're so busy being successful that you forgot how to be a wife." The words landed like stones. "I built your client base," I said, and my voice sounded strange, distant. "I introduced you to half the people who keep your business running. I've covered for you at a dozen dinners when you were too busy to show up. I've listened to you practice every pitch, read every proposal, celebrated every win like it was mine too. And there it is." He smiled, bitter and cold. "The accounting. The resume of everything you've done for me. That's not love, Caroline. That's keeping receipts. I planned this dinner for 3 weeks, Marcus. And I," he said slowly, "was closing a deal worth 6 figures. Real work. Not some symbolic gesture that makes you feel like you're in a romance novel." He picked up his beer again. "You want honesty? Fine. Here's honesty. It's exhausting. You're exhausting. Always trying, always planning, always performing like our marriage is some project you're managing. Maybe if you spent less time trying to prove you're the perfect wife and more time actually being someone I want to come home to, I wouldn't forget these things." He called me a failure. Not in those exact words, but in every word that mattered. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, loud in the sudden silence. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To bed," I said. "That's it? No fight? No tears?" He laughed again, that same cruel sound. "Wow. Even your disappointment is boring." I walked past him without answering. Went upstairs. Changed out of the blue dress I'd never wear again. Got into bed in the guest room I'd been sleeping in more often than I wanted to admit. And I made a decision that would change everything. But I didn't tell him that night. I didn't tell him anything at all. I just let him think he'd won. The next morning I woke up at 5:30 the way I always did. Made coffee. Showered. Dressed in one of the sharp gray suits I wore to court. Marcus was still asleep when I left for the office, sprawled across our bed like he hadn't just dismantled 10 years of my life with 20 minutes of casual cruelty. I didn't wake him. I didn't leave a note. I simply left. At work, I did something I hadn't done in 6 years. I closed my office door and pulled up every joint account, every shared asset, every financial document that had both our names on it. Marcus handled our personal finances, or so I'd let him believe. Truth was, I reviewed everything quarterly. I was a lawyer. Due diligence wasn't just professional habit, it was survival instinct. What I found didn't surprise me. It should have. But it didn't. 3 significant withdrawals over the past 8 months, each labeled business investment. Credit card I didn't recognize opened in both our names with a balance of $18,000. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel in Asheville, 5 separate stays, always on weekends I'd been told he was visiting his mother in Raleigh. His mother had been dead for 3 years. I sat there staring at the screen, and that strange clarity from the night before sharpened into something colder. Something precise. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I did what I did best. I built a case. I started with the assistant he'd mentioned working late with so often. Her name was Brennan Chase. 26. She'd been with his firm for 18 months. I didn't need to hire an investigator, I just needed to pay attention. Her social media was public. And there, between carefully curated posts about fitness and brunch, were gaps. Weekends with no posts at all. The same weekends Marcus had been traveling for work. I took screenshots. Saved everything. Said nothing. At home, Marcus acted like our anniversary disaster had never happened. He was cheerful at breakfast the following weekend, talking about a new client he'd landed. He thanked me when I handed him his coffee. He kissed my cheek before heading to his Saturday consultation, which, according to the credit card statement I'd pulled that morning, was actually a lunch reservation for two at a bistro 30 miles outside Charlotte. "I'll be back by dinner," he said. "Take your time," I replied. He looked at me oddly then, like he'd heard something in my voice he couldn't quite identify. But he shrugged it off and left. I spent that Saturday doing something I hadn't done in months. I had lunch with my colleague Rachel, who'd been asking me to meet up for weeks. We went to a quiet place downtown, and over wine and pasta, she finally asked the question she'd clearly been holding back. "Caroline, are you okay?" And I mean really okay, not the okay you give everyone at the office. I could have lied. I'd gotten very good at lying, especially to myself. Instead, I said, "My husband forgot our 10th anniversary." When I confronted him about it, he told me I was exhausting and boring. Then he went back to sleeping with his assistant. Rachel's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Jesus Christ, Caroline." "I haven't confirmed the affair yet," I said calmly. "But the evidence is fairly conclusive. Hotel charges, unexplained expenses, a pattern of deception that's been ongoing for at least 18 months, possibly longer." "You sound like you're presenting evidence in court." "That's because I am." I took a sip of wine. "I'm just not sure yet what verdict I'm seeking." She leaned forward. "What do you mean you're not sure?" "Caroline, he cheated. He's probably still cheating. You're a lawyer. You know exactly what you should do." "I know what I could do," I corrected. "File for divorce. Split everything 50-50 or fight for more based on infidelity. Make it ugly. Make it public. Destroy his reputation the way he's been destroying our marriage." "So why haven't you?" That was the question, wasn't it? "Because," I said slowly, "I don't want him to see it coming, and I don't want him to walk away thinking he won." Rachel studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled, sharp and approving. "What do you need?" What I needed was time. And information. And the kind of cold patience I developed in 10 years of litigation. Rachel worked in family law. She wasn't my attorney, that would have been a conflict, but she knew people. By Monday, I had a consultation scheduled with Patricia Morrison, the best divorce attorney in Charlotte, known for dismantling even the most carefully hidden assets. By Wednesday, I'd met with her privately and handed over everything I'd collected. Patricia reviewed the documents with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen this story 1,000 times. "He's been sloppy," she said. "The hidden credit card, the cash withdrawals. He hasn't even tried to cover his tracks. Either he's arrogant or he thinks you're not paying attention." "Both," I said. "Good. Arrogance makes my job easier." She looked up at me. "Here's what I need to know. What do you want from this?" "Financially, I can get you far more than half. He's been using marital assets to fund an affair, and he's opened credit in your name without disclosure. That's fraud. We can bury him." "I don't want to bury him," I said. Patricia raised an eyebrow. "I want him to bury himself," I clarified. "I want him to realize all at once exactly what he's lost. Not because I took it. Because he threw it away." She smiled then, the way wolves smile. "That," she said, "I can absolutely arrange." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would do nothing. I would change nothing. I would continue being the wife Marcus had decided I was, supportive, boring, predictable. I would let him think he'd won the argument, that I'd accepted his version of our marriage, that I was too pathetic or too dependent to leave. And while he relaxed into that assumption, I would dismantle everything quietly, carefully, and completely. Tricia filed preliminary paperwork but kept it sealed. I opened a separate bank account and began transferring my earnings there, legally, transparently, with every deposit documented. I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy, updated my will, and secured copies of every document we'd need for court. Marcus noticed nothing. He was too busy with Brennan. I knew her schedule now. Thursdays they had lunch. Tuesdays, He left work early to meet her at the gym they both suddenly belonged to. Saturdays were their day, brunch, shopping, the performance of a relationship they thought was secret. He came home from these outings lighter, happier, more affectionate with me in that absent way people are when their guilt has been temporarily satisfied. He brought me flowers one evening. Grocery store roses, nothing like the peonies he'd once chosen with care. Just because, he said, kissing my forehead. Thank you, I said. They're lovely. I put them in water and watched them die over the next week, petals falling one by one onto the kitchen counter. Took 6 weeks to gather everything Patricia needed. 6 weeks of smiling over dinners I cooked while Marcus texted Brennan under the table. 6 weeks of listening to him complain about clients he'd stolen from my network. 6 weeks of sleeping in separate rooms while he told his friends we'd never been happier. And then, on a Tuesday evening in late October, Patricia called. "We're ready," she said. "Whenever you are." I looked around the kitchen where I'd spent our anniversary alone. Looked at the house I'd helped buy, the life I'd helped build, the marriage I'd tried so desperately to save. "Tomorrow," I said. "Serve him tomorrow. At the office or at home?" I thought about that. Thought about Marcus's pristine professional image, the reputation he'd crafted so carefully with my help. "At the office," I said. During his Thursday lunch. The lunch he always had with Brennan. Patricia's smile was audible through the phone. Perfect. I didn't sleep that Wednesday night. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. I lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. Thursday morning arrived cool and bright. I made coffee for one. Marcus had already left early for a breakfast meeting that wasn't on any calendar I had access to. The house was quiet in the way houses are when they're already empty, even before anyone leaves. I dressed with care. Navy suit, the one I wore for closing arguments. Hair pulled back. Minimal jewelry. I looked exactly like what I was, someone who'd stopped asking for permission. The office, I worked through my morning cases with mechanical precision. Reviewed briefs. Turned emails. Participated in a conference call about a merger that would have normally consumed my full attention. But part of my mind was somewhere else, counting down. Patricia had scheduled the serving for 12:30 p.m. Marcus's Thursday lunch with Brennan always started at noon at a small Italian place near his office. They'd be halfway through their meal, comfortable and careless, when the process server walked in. 12:28, my phone buzzed. "Patricia, server is in position." 12:33, asterisk papers delivered. He's reading them now, asterisk. At 12:35, he's trying to call you. My phone lit up. Marcus's name flashing across the screen. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined again. Then the text started. "What the fuck is this? Call me right now. Caroline, this isn't funny. We need to talk about this. I know you're getting these. You can't just do this without talking to me first." I turned my phone face down and went back to work. He called 17 times that afternoon. Left 8 voicemails that progressed from confused to angry to something that almost sounded like panic. I listened to none of them. At 4 o'clock, Patricia called. "He's contacted my office 6 times, she said. "Demanding to speak with you. Demanding to know what this is about. Threatening to, and I quote, fix this misunderstanding immediately." What did you tell him? That all communication goes through me now, and that if he has questions about the filing, he should retain counsel. She paused. He doesn't seem to understand that this is real. He will, I said. I went home at my normal time. Marcus's car was already in the driveway, parked at an angle like he'd arrived in a hurry. Every light in the house was on. He met me at the door before I'd even set down my briefcase. "What the hell are you doing?" His face was flushed, papers crumpled in his fist. "Divorce? You're filing for divorce without even talking to me about it?" I walked past him into the kitchen, set my bag on the counter, took off my coat. Caroline, I'm talking to you. I know, I said calmly. I can hear you. Then answer me. What is this? What are you thinking? I turned to face him. He looked genuinely bewildered, like he couldn't fathom how we'd arrived at this moment. Like the past 10 years, the past 6 months, the past anniversary, had simply vanished from his memory. I'm thinking, I said quietly, that I'm done. Done with what? We had one fight, Caroline. One bad night. That doesn't mean you blow up our entire marriage. One bad night. I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us. Marcus, you forgot our 10th anniversary. You came home at 2 in the morning and called me exhausting and boring. You told me I'd forgotten how to be a wife. I was frustrated. I didn't mean. You meant every word. I opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of water. Took my time opening it. But that's not why I'm divorcing you. He stared at me. Then why? Because of Brennan. Color drained from his face. Because of the 18 months you've been sleeping with your assistant while I paid our mortgage with my salary and built your client list with my connections. Because of the secret credit card you opened in both our names to fund your hotel weekends. Because of every lie you've told and every time you've made me feel crazy for noticing. Caroline. I have bank statements, Marcus. Credit card records. Hotel receipts. Text messages you thought you deleted but backed up to our shared cloud. I have photos from her social media that match your business trips down to the date and location. I have 18 months of evidence, and I've given all of it to my attorney. He sank into a chair. Jesus Christ. You weren't even careful, I continued. You used our joint credit card for anniversary flowers you gave to her. You charged couples massages to an account I could access with a single login. You were so certain I wasn't paying attention that you didn't bother to hide any of it. It wasn't. He ran his hands through his hair. It didn't mean anything. She doesn't mean anything. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. You risked our marriage, our home, our entire life together for someone who doesn't mean anything. You threw away 10 years for hotel rooms and lunch dates and the ego boost of having someone younger think you're important. Caroline, please. His voice cracked. We can fix this. I'll end it. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't do this. I'm not doing anything, Marcus. You did this. 18 months ago when you made a choice. Every day since then when you kept making it. He stood up, moved toward me. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. That doesn't mean you throw away a decade of marriage. You're right, I said. It doesn't. Which is why I didn't throw it away when you missed our 8th anniversary. Or when you were late to our 9th. Or when you stopped touching me like you meant it, or talking to me like you respected me, or treating me like I was someone worth keeping a promise to. Then when? He demanded. When did you decide to throw it all away? When you called me a failure, I said softly. When you looked at a table I'd set with flowers you used to love and food I'd made with care and you laughed. When you told me I was the problem. That's when I realized you'd already thrown it away. I was just the last one to notice. He was crying now and I felt nothing. That should have scared me, that absence of feeling. But it didn't. Felt like relief. What do you want? He asked. Money? The house? I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't do this. I want the divorce finalized as quickly as possible. I want you to move out by the end of the week. And I want you to sign the settlement agreement my attorney prepared. I'm not signing anything without reading it first. That's fine. Take all the time you need. But the terms aren't negotiable, and every day you wait is another day of evidence I'm collecting. Your choice. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Who are you? I'm the woman who spent 10 years being someone you could discard, I said. I'm done with that now. The settlement was generous, considering. I kept the house, which I'd put the down payment on using my signing bonus. I kept my retirement accounts, my investments, everything that had ever been solely mine. We split the joint savings 50-50, minus the $18,000 he'd stolen from us to fund his affair. That amount was deducted from his half as reimbursement. His business remained his, but with one condition. He could no longer use my name, my connections, or my reputation in any professional capacity. Every client I'd referred to him received a polite email explaining that I was no longer associated with his firm. Several of them left him immediately. Brennan didn't survive the fallout. Turns out, having an affair with your boss is frowned upon in professional circles, especially when that boss is in the middle of a divorce caused by said affair. She resigned 3 weeks after the papers were served. Last I heard, she'd moved to Atlanta. Marcus signed everything within a month. Not because he wanted to, but because Patricia made it clear that going to trial would only expose more of what he'd been doing, and his reputation couldn't survive that kind of scrutiny. He moved out on a cold Saturday in November. Took his clothes, his office equipment, half the furniture. Left behind the wine from our anniversary, still unopened on the counter. I poured it down the drain after he left. The divorce was finalized in January, 3 months after I'd served him. Quick and quiet, exactly as I'd wanted. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I sat in the house that was now entirely mine and felt the weight of 10 years lift off my shoulders like a coat I'd forgotten I was wearing. Marcus tried to reach out a few times in the months after. Emails that started with "I've been thinking" and texts that said, "Can we talk?" I blocked his number after the 3rd attempt. There was nothing left to say. I heard through mutual friends that he'd struggled after the divorce. Lost clients. Lost credibility. Spent months trying to rebuild what he'd assumed would always be there. No one mentioned if he'd learned anything from it. I didn't ask. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was promoted to senior partner at my firm. Came with a corner office, a significant raise, and a caseload I'd been preparing for my entire career. The night they told me, I went home to my quiet house and cooked myself dinner. Just me. White peonies on the table, bought because I wanted them, not because they meant anything to anyone else. I didn't need someone to celebrate with. I didn't need validation or applause. I'd spent 10 years building someone else's empire while neglecting my own. I wasn't making that mistake again. The lesson wasn't about revenge, though that's what it looked like from the outside. It was about understanding that dignity isn't something someone gives you, it's something you stop letting people take. Marcus didn't destroy our marriage when he forgot our anniversary or when he slept with Brennan. He destroyed it every time I accepted less than I deserved and convinced myself that love meant tolerating disrespect. The revenge wasn't in the divorce papers or the settlement or even in watching his carefully constructed life unravel. The revenge was in choosing myself. In walking away from someone who'd made me feel small and building a life where I finally felt whole. In realizing that the opposite of love isn't hatred, it's indifference. And I'd never been more indifferent or more free. My name is Caroline. And I am no longer anyone's failure.